Oh wait, I need to start recording the webinar. I am recording. Okay, so we bring in some of the world's top regenerative designers, consultants, farmers, and bring them on to share you some of the lessons they've learned, because a lot of these guys have been working for 10 years and no one's heard about their work. And we want to bring these people on because they're doing amazing work in the world that can help you level up your skills. So without further ado, I'll let Neil introduce Nicholas Netien. So go ahead, Neil.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sustainable Design Masterclass, everybody. I first met Nick and his wife, Maria, at my permaculture design course in 2010. And we were in Jordan with Jeff Lawton doing dryland-specific stuff. And then we've kept in touch for most of that time period, on and off. But 2 or 3 years ago, I started seeing them advertising for olive oil that they're producing in Cyprus. And over time, I've been able to tell from afar that they're getting better at what they're doing. And these folks are my favorite type of person in that they're really smart, but they're also on the ground doing the work that a lot of us either admire or want to be doing or need to learn from. And that's really my favorite kind of person to talk to, because they've got really valuable experience, but they also know how to describe that and how to teach those lessons that they've got. So I'm really, really excited to have Nick with us today to talk about his polyculture operation in Cyprus. And we're going to turn it over to you, Nick. We're so thankful for the time you put into putting this together. Thankful to you folks for coming to watch. Welcome.
All right, so Nick, I made you the presenter, so go ahead, share your screen whenever you're ready.
Just let me know when that happens. Is it working now?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
See your screen.
Switch to PowerPoint.
Alright.
Boom, there we go. So make it full screen, and we're ready to rock. Awesome.
Okay. So my name. Can you still see me? Sorry, I'm new to this.
Yeah, no, we can see you. You're all good to go. Hey, everybody, if you can see Nicholas, let us know. We gotta make sure we're not in the dark here. So just type in the chat box. Let me know if everything looks fine, because I can see his map of Cyprus and part of the Mediterranean. Yep,
looks
like
good
people
to
can
me.
see him.
Okay. So my name is Nicholas. Thank you very much, Neil, and really for setting this up. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. I'm originally from France. I'm French. I did a first permaculture design course in 2005 in New Zealand. I was environmental engineer before, and I went to travel, and I came across permaculture in Australia, and then I went further in New Zealand, and since then I've been basically working in permaculture and researching in permaculture in different kinds of projects, mainly on waste management at the beginning and on community development, and I was working in France for the government, and I got fed up with it at some point. Went to Jordan, where I met Neil and most importantly my wife Maria. And after Jordan we went to Australia, as Neil said. Then we went back to Greece, and from Greece we started a little consulting company for farmers, for permaculture stuff basically. So about 4.5 years ago, I met Maria's uncle, and we clicked very quickly. He is a man of nature, he's someone who really understands. So as soon as I started speaking about permaculture, it went on, very well between us. And he said, "Listen, I have this place in Cyprus because Maria's family is originally from Cyprus. It's a 2-hectare olive grove. Can you come and have a look at it?" So we came, and it was the first time, and I'm going to come back about it in a second to walk you through the process. But just to present Cyprus, it's an island in the in the Mediterranean Sea, sorry. It's basically in the Middle East, as you can see on the map. We're very close to Syria, Lebanon. We're on the same latitude than Tunisia. It was invaded in 1974 by Turkey after a coup in Cyprus, who wanted to join the island with Greece. So Turkey retaliated by invading almost half of the island. So the island is still cut in half. They had some peace talk last week and it failed, so we don't know, how long it's going to stay. But it's been 42 years that the island is divided. The UN is in charge of keeping peace. There's a buffer zone. It's those two lines you can see on the map. And we are farming inside this buffer zone. We were amongst the first farmers to come in that buffer zone. So we arrived in a territory that had very little human activity for a bit more than 40 years. So it's quite interesting for that. We in a Bay of Morphus on the north bit. I don't know if you see my cursor, but we're just here. And what I'm showing here now on the map is the oldest mine in the world called Skouryotissa, and we're next to it. It's still in activity. They're still mining copper here. The mining started with the Egyptians coming on the island, and the name Cyprus comes from the Greek word chalko, that means copper. So we're in an area that was one of the first area with human settlement here in Cyprus. What you can see just behind us is the Troodos Mountains that go up to 2,000 meters. And that's what is saving Cyprus from becoming a complete desert, because it stops a lot of rain. And during the time of the British colony, lots of dams were set up. And most of the irrigation water in Cyprus comes from those dams coming from the mountain. This is a Google Earth picture of the first piece of land we worked on. It's a 2-hectare olive grove. I'm going to come back to it in a little bit. And that's the new bit we're developing now, which is around 40 hectares. So that's why just before we started working on it in 2014, there is almost no vegetation. You can see from few bushes, which are basically mainly Sisyphus plants, bushes. We have the lowest rainfall in Cyprus because we're in rain shadow between the Troodos mountain and the Pendedactyla mountain and the Bay of Morphus. So we have an average of 300 to 350 millimeters per year, but since last year, we got only 3 millimeters. We had one rain in 13 months and then rain after that. But since then, nothing. So we're in the middle of a drought. It seems like it's something that looks like it's going to happen more often. The mine next to us has, a weather station and data for 20 years, and I got access to those data. What we notice is a steady increase in total rainfall. So we lost about 17% of rainfall over the last 20 years, with a sharp acceleration over the last 5 years. So what we're getting ready here is for the day where we won't have water at all for irrigation. So everything we're designing now, everything we're doing is to get ready for that day, because it's going to happen. So this is just after we started, so that was taken in May. I will explain what it is, how we made the dam, and this in detail in a minute. So when we first arrived, for me as a foreigner, not knowing much about Cyprus, the main impression we had is a military impression. The house we live in is just on the border of the UN zone, but it's still a military zone. There's no grid here. We're off grid. We're sending the internet from 3 kilometers away from an antenna. That's why the connection is not very good today. I'm sorry about that. But my first impression were a military impression, and it's a very, very strange feeling. So to work in the UN zone, you need a permit, you need a training for mine awareness, because there's still some mines around. Normally not so much, but you never know. So that's how it looks like. We have lots of military pieces of equipment on the land. This is a bunker belonging to the army. We need to give access to them. This is another bunker. You can see the olives in the background. Another bunker, a mirador on top of the hill of the land. And if you drive 10 minutes up the mountain, you can see this kind of forest. So that's how Cyprus used to be, the entire island. And it's pretty much the same for Greece and a big part of Turkey and the Middle East. Up to the antiquity was covered in beautiful, diverse forest. Here it's an oak tree, the Aleppo oak, used to cover most of the island. And then with the antiquity, shipbuilding, and in our area, the making of copper, they started cutting down trees and never really recovered. So when we arrived, we've seen this. The 2 hectares were planted, about 600 trees, 3 years before we arrived. So about 7 years, 8 years old trees, and they were planting with a pneumatic drill directly into the rocks. No topsoil whatsoever. But it's a very, very interesting rock, because it's a rock that you can't really find anywhere else in the world. The geology of Cyprus, coming from Rhodos, it's unique in the world. It came from a cataclysm, and it's basically what you usually find 300 meters deep. It's right on the surface for us. So we're working on upper pillow lava. There's no organic matter in it. And there's a quite fast infiltration rate. But it's very interesting when you grow olives, because it gives the olive oil a very specific flavor, a very specific organoleptic profile. So when they planted those trees, they brought an expert from Greece. And after making the hole with the pneumatic drill, the expert told the man who was in charge here to put manure in the holes, and that's what they did. And they started irrigating with a sprayer. So basically what happened is a big potting effect. The root system of the tree started growing like in spiral, like in a pot. And now we have those trees, you can almost take them out. We still have some trees that are blown by the wind, and usually on an olive tree after the first year you can remove any pegging, any staking. The root system should be strong enough to withstand wind. In our case, for these 600 trees, it's not really the case. So we're trying to fix that. We're trying to retrain the root system. It's a big job. So the first thing, when we arrived for consulting, there was no mechanization in the olive grove. Everything was done by hand, and at the time there was no plan for mechanization. So we decided to mark some contour amongst the olive trees, Maria and I, and then we start digging along this contour very, very slowly, very gently, very shallow, and make very little mounds. And on this mound we planted aromatics. The project was to do some essential oil out of these aromatics. So we planted sage, lavender, rosemary, oregano, etc., etc., thyme, etc. It had very, very, very quickly an amazing effect. Everything was done by hand. It was not a big investment there. We dug about 3 kilometers of swale. My wife was 8.5 months pregnant and was digging with us. But what happened is, after the first rain, any pieces of organic matter start accumulating behind those rolls of aromatics. And we were able to grow these aromatics without irrigation for a very long time. And as you see them now, they're not being irrigated. And remember, it's 13 months with no rain, and they're still working. We're starting changing the irrigation system, moving away from sprayers that lost about 30% in evaporation just mechanically before the water drops touch the soil. So we installed some drippers, self-regulated drippers, that we find here in Cyprus. And these drippers, they don't block, because we're working here on the Estima on this land with very, very, very salty water, and there's a lot of sediment, and they can work with very low pressure. And they bring the water directly to the root system. So we started by putting the drippers close to the trunk, where we knew the root system was forming this spot, and now we're moving them away slowly to try to train the root system to move away from that pattern of the roots growing in circles. So that's more pictures with this is oregano, sorry, growing in the middle of the trees. And that's another plant that we really love when we grow olives. It's called the Ditrichia viscosa. It's a fantastic plant. It's wild. We're trying to seed it, and it's not a very good success rate, but slowly it's spreading. It hosts a parasite of the olive fly, so it's a huge alive or natural pest control. It also provides flowers when nothing else flowers, so it's very good for bees, and it's extremely drought resistant. It grows wild with no irrigation whatsoever. And then here, I don't know if you see very well, but as soon as we planted the trees, the birds start moving in. And in Cyprus, we have a very important place for birds, because it's a big stop for migratory birds. And specifically where we are, we're in an important bird area of Cyprus. So we have lots of birds. And as soon as you start putting trees and places where they can perch, they come in. And when they come in, they poo and they stay. And so they manure and they fertilize your trees for free, and they bring you some treasures like this thing which is growing in the olive tree. It's a wild asparagus, and we start having lots and lots on the land, and that will be a future product for us, because it's a delicacy. It's very expensive, and this came naturally, and it's very difficult to multiply them in a nursery. The seed has to go through the digestive system of the bird. He evolved towards that. But this is one of the little surprises we had. That's another viscosa. It's growing next to the tree. This was not planted. It came naturally, also with birds. So this grove, those 600 trees, it's not convenient to bring any tractor in it, but the idea was to have no mechanization whatsoever at the beginning. I will explain what we did on the big piece of land. We changed strategy. But in this one, you can just walk around, and there's tons of herbs, and we did a count of any plant species we could find when we arrived 4.5 years ago, and we counted 56. Mainly artichoke family, those wild thistle and dry pioneer spiky plants. We redid a count last winter, and we were 350 species of plants around it. So because we believe that it's the diversity that's going to bring stability in our system, we're very happy about this. It starts showing on the pest control. We have far less pests than before. We barely sprayed this year for the olive fly. We sprayed 2 times on these olive trees, and we have very little damage. just because we provided environment for many bugs, many plants, and things like this. This costed very little, except multiplying the plants and stuff. But the actual digging, surveying and stuff, it's a very low cost modification of the grow. So here we have rosemary. This is the top of the land with the mirador on top. Same picture, the top of the land, and you see at the back here, this is the sea. So we have constant wind coming from the north, from the sea, bringing a sea spray, which makes life a little bit more difficult to grow things, but makes product much, much, much better. So this was the only tree that was present before they started planting. This is in Greek they call it the moss filler. It's a Crataceous acerola. It's an amazing, amazing tree. Extremely drought resistant. This one, was growing with no irrigation whatsoever. It's a very slow growth if there's no irrigation, and it provides a bay which is delicious, and you can do jams and a lot of product with it. And I'm working now on doing a balsamic vinegar out of the bays. We planted also many other trees, lots of different oak species, Quercus suber. This is the Infectoria, the Aleppo oak. On edges, on places where we wanted to create a pocket of wildlife, and I will explain in a minute why we want to do that. And this was a great surprise, our first mushroom. It happened just after last rain. It was about a month ago. We had less than 2 millimeter rain, and we had our first mushroom coming out. So this is just at the bottom of an olive tree, and you can see organic matter accumulating, starting to break down, and providing nutrients and water storage for us. So after a year, Maya's uncle gave us a call and said, okay, I want to increase the land. I want to go serious into commercial production. So he bought another piece of land, which is about 1.5 kilometers from the one you've seen before. It's about 4 hectares, and we decided to plant only 2 out of it. We left lots of wild places, and we planted olive trees, and we decided to do cells of 100 trees with different treatment on every cell. So some trees are interplanted with nitrogen fixing acacias, some were inoculated with mycorrhizal fungi, some were applied different types of compost, etc. to see what was the difference. What we notice now, this has been planted 2 years ago, and those are the trees that produced the world record in polyphenol olive oil. The most healthy olive oil in the world was produced from those trees. What we noticed is that the most efficient practice, of course you can combine them, but yeah, if you take them separately, was the inoculation of mycorrhizal fungi. It made the trees grow much faster and bear way more olives, mainly I think because of better access to water, thanks to the fungi that extend the root system of the tree. The nitrogen fixing trees were not really a success, probably because we didn't have the right species. They needed too much water, and we are very, very water scarce, especially on this land. We're giving about 5 times less water that the Ministry of Cyprus recommends for olive trees. But they are growing quite fast, and the quality is quite amazing. This is the road coming down, and we planted also pomegranates. We have so far about 400 trees of pomegranates. We're juicing them, and we're making vinegar with it. This is the same land from the bottom. So you see, we kept all the places where it was not very convenient for us to come with a tractor. In Cyprus, typically what people will do is to bring a big digger and flat the whole thing up. But what you see growing here, it's a thyme bush. This thyme bush is about probably 25 years old. So for us, it was a crime to touch this. And this wild bit actually is providing us lots of services in terms of bringing organic matter and being habitat for birds and bugs for our natural pest control. Those trees here, we had no need to spray them. We didn't have any insecticide apply on those trees ever. When we use insecticide, we use, of course, organic pesticide. We certified organic, but we don't like to use them, even if the pesticide we're using is associated with a pheromone for the olive fly. But our goal is to try not to have any physical action for pest control and let the system do. And of course, it's difficult at the beginning because system needs to mature and needs to diversify itself to be stable. But because this place was not touched for 42 years and there was no olives growing nearby, we didn't need anything, which is amazing and very, very cost effective as well, because all this spraying costs lots of money. The trees are suffering. We like them to suffer to create good quality oil. We keep them happy up to the fruits start appearing, and then we almost shut off the irrigation. We lower the irrigation to the minimum just to keep the tree alive, really. And we're thinking that in about 10 years' time, we'll be able to switch off the irrigation. We'll see when we're there. That's another picture from the top. So, of course, we're not tilling. Tilling is, especially in that type of climate, it's completely crazy, and that's what everyone does here. In our area, there's not much agriculture. The only agriculture there is, it's subsidized agriculture. People are growing subsidized. They're growing wheat and barley, so they're getting paid according to the amount of land they are tilling. The government is using satellite carts, so they till as much as they can. So they till in places that, on bare rocks. They remove all these bushes and these thymes just to show that on the satellite picture that they did cultivate it to touch the subsidized. But basically, in 2 years, no wheat ever grew here. There's no rain. But it's still happening. Thanks to the European system for agriculture subsidized, which basically killed traditional agriculture. Anyway, that's another story. Same picture again, so you can see the environment. All around us, all those fields are being tilled for wheat and barley. Nothing grows. This white road here is the last border between the occupied area and Cyprus, and just behind here's the sea and the Bay of Morpho. And when we're not tilling, we bring in goats. The goats are left to roam free, so when the goat roam free, she goes for whatever she likes most first. So the good, tasty, sophisticated, soft plant goes first, and is left the pioneer, spiky bushes or nothing at all. So when we arrived, the land was this basically grazed by goats, misgrazed. We can use goats to regenerate landscape, but you have to graze them the proper way. So that's a view and access to Artima. So just so you have a look and you understand how it looks like. And this is the main vegetation you find, and it's quite an amazing one. I took this picture 2 days ago. It's deciduous, so nice, losing its leaves. That's a Sisyphus lotus. They grow with no water. They have a tap root that goes really deep. They tap into whatever water they can find down there, and then they bring it up and bring moisture around its system, and birds are coming in, and many other plants are living there. The wild rabbits are living there, the foxes are living there. Most of the birds we have here, they nest on the ground, so they will nest in these places. And this is a huge, huge pocket of life in the middle of the dry environment. And this is just thanks to that bush that has the ability of going really deep for water and bringing it up. So every time we've seen those bushes, we never touch them. And of course, the locals think we're crazy to keep those really, really spiky stuff in between our fields, but they provide amazing services for us. So when we arrived to the big land, we had no water there. We made a borehole. We could get about 5 cubic meters of water per day, which was not enough to irrigate 6,000 trees. So our first and our only really big investment, because we're a commercial operation, budget are tight, was to make a dam to have a reservoir of water so we can hold and irrigate our young trees through the summer, so keep them alive. So we basically did some kind of hybrid of a valley dam. It was already a dry riverbed, if you like, a dry creek. You can see here. Here we had to put some beton so we can pass over with cars and trucks. And from there we did lots of drains. We made a road that we designed to drain the water into that dam on both sides, and we are, of course, all buildings are, the water goes to the dam, etc., etc. And this picture was taken 3 days ago. The dam is full because now we got the authorization and we plugged ourselves to a dam which is about 8 kilometers away in the mountain, and so we installed 8 kilometers of pipes. And now we have access to good water from the mountain, but it's very expensive one. So we want to rely as much as possible on the water we're collecting. So the water before going to the dam goes into that mini dam, if you want, which has a slope and is the size of 2 times the bucket of my tractor. So some of the sediment that the water will carry, some of the soil will stay into that dam. And then in the summer, after the water is evaporated in there, we go and we pick up that beautiful topsoil, and we're using it for potting mix for our cuttings, our tree planting and stuff like that. So the water comes from here, from that pipe, and then overflows into the dam. I have better pictures. So that's how it looks like. And then it overflows in here into that dam. This dam was made last winter, basically. And when we finished it, I started putting soil in it because our ambition was to create an ecosystem here as well. So we put in a lot of fish. A very nice guy from Cyprus gave us lots of tilapia. We have bass, carps and stuff like that. And now we're in the process of covering about 80% of the surface to reduce evaporation with a system of floating islands and solar panels. I personally don't like to see plastic, so we're growing this sedum around it to cover the plastic. There's no clay whatsoever into our soil, so it was not possible to do a natural dam. We had to use liner. But eventually, when the sedum will grow, we won't see the plastic. This is the road we made, which has a drain on the side. We are growing carrots there on this road, and also aromatics in between. Those carrots were planted last winter, so they are like a year old. With the carrots, on the farm we're doing a syrup, and with the syrup we're turning it into balsamic vinegar as well. So that's rosemary and carrot together. This is the entry. At some point the owner wanted to have horses here, and then he changed his mind, so this prefab stables is used as a storage, and basically all the water that is falling down from the main road, which is just behind us, which is has asphalt on it, is directed into that and goes all the way to the dam. I've got little videos, but I don't think they will be working. So we had a quite tight budget. When I first came, you know, I wanted to bring big bulldozers and, you know, lots of contours and fancy permaculture stuff. And the budget was pretty much eaten by the dam building. So what we started to do is to remove the stones from the fields because they are bothering us for cutting the grass. And we basically placed them everywhere we could see erosion, which is basically kind of a check dam. And this had an amazing effect, way more than expected. Just piling a few stones in the right place has brings incredible changes. In those stones, lots of things are growing. Creates a pocket of humidity here. Here you can't see because the picture was taken 3 days ago, but when you see after the rain, everywhere is dry, but here we have a beautiful pocket. I found a frog in one of just behind one of these check dam, and we don't even have frogs into our dam. I mean, it's insane. And we planted lots of prickly pears. We also want to make oil from the seeds once they're a bit bigger. As you see, we got a lot of damage this summer with rabbits and rats and birds, but they are surviving. We are irrigating them very little. They are an amazing fire break. So we grow them around our cells. So we're trying to do cells now on this big land, about 600 trees, 700 trees, and that are surrounded by other plants, you know, pomegranates, carrots, and always as a finish, the prickly pear as a windbreak. So this is pretty much a contour with the stones as well, just to slow down a little bit of erosion. But what we noticed is once you have a good ground cover, once the ground cover is established, and that could be anything, you have very little erosion. So all these fancy big swales and things like that, if you don't have the budget, you don't need them really, especially in a dry land. Swales are not a good alternative. We probably go a little bit deeper in question and answers. I haven't been with weights. So in some other places we just place them. That's the border of the land, just to slow down the water. Even if it's the neighbor's land, it doesn't matter. We had so many stones. It was an amazing resource. Everyone said, oh, why are you going to plant? You know, it's just a stone field, there's nothing you can do. But for us, this problem became a solution and bring us lots of advantages. That's another check dam. Here you see the Cratagé de Mosfila, the Cratagé acerola that is growing. The olive trees are below here, and that's just a wide hill, and we just put the stones here. And once again, it's very dry now because we, no rain in 13 months, but they created an amazing growth behind it, and that became host for more birds, more rabbits, more bugs, etc. And of course, again, the wild asparagus growing all over the places. Everywhere we piled some stones, the wild asparagus is growing in it, because in the winter, when the fruit of the asparagus is there, the birds love to come and warm up on the stones, and of course they poo there and they propagate the asparagus like this. So we probably had about 30 wild asparagus plants since we started. We're gonna count them this winter, but I think we way above 300 now. So we're gonna be able to start a commercial production of the wild asparagus without planting a single one. They all came naturally. And that's another example, the prickly pear, half eaten, but still making it. We okay to share some of our growth with the local animals. So this is the way we irrigate when there's a small plant. So we have a big main line and then a smaller line, and on this smaller line we plug that little piece of dripper. So we basically cut rolls of drippers for the two sides, and here we have 1, 2. So I know that I can give 8 liters an hour here, and I can work on the low pressure, 1.5 bar. So that's another example. That's the pile of stones, also on contour, and you see what's growing. Only 2 millimeters of rain, and boom. Growth like crazy. They have wild asparagus, you have the cistus behind, another sisyphus there, another wild asparagus in stones. So along the road, on the way to the land, I was walking one day and I just started piling 1 or 2 stones like that just to look pretty. And I don't know if you see very well, but this is cover in bird poo. Just to show you that if you just change the environment a little bit, you just add a little modification. In that case, just 3 stones piled up. It's probably 70 centimeters high, but that's good enough for a bird to come in and to warm up in the morning. And we have a bird coming every day here, manuring. So you create a spot here of, high fertilization, if you like, just by piling 3 stones. So you don't need big, fancy change into your environment. Just little touches like this. It's all about observing these little things, trying to minimize the work by doing slight little change, observing them, see what works, and then repeating the pattern. That's another one. So you see that shit everywhere. And then the second investment was mechanization, because we had to plant like 6,000 olive trees and about another 3,000 different trees. So we looked for a tractor that could do all this for us, while doing many other things. There's a principle of permaculture that says an element should perform many functions, and that's the case. So that's a fairly cheap tractor. It's a Ferrari, not the Ferrari, Gianni Ferrari, with a Kubota engine, so it's quite a reliable engine. It has an axis, so it can move just like a forklift. So we use it to make holes for plantation, as you see here. We also can use it for pallets. In the factory, we receive pallets of bottles, etc. So we use the same tractor. We have a bucket that we use for many things, like moving compost, moving things around. This is a trench digger. We use that to dig trenches, to bury all our irrigation pipes. This is what we cut the grass with, because we cut the grass, that's what we do once a year, mainly for fire risk. That's the main reason we're doing it. So with this also plugs on the tractor, so it goes really fast. And now that we don't have stones on the floor, we can cut the grass in a few days. And this we made, it's a special fork that we can put on the pallet fork of the tractor, and we use this to turn the compost. And that's the only mechanization that was on the first land that we used to cut the grass in places where the tractor cannot pass. It's basically a lawnmower on steroids. It goes everywhere. It's very good. But you see very little mechanization. Our neighbor next door has 200 goats and 5 tractors. And the reason why is European subsidies. And they give you half of it, and then you pay for half of it. So he has 5 tractors and a half-finished building to make halloumi cheese. Is completely, I mean, is about 400,000 euros in debt, and all this because of agriculture policies and subsidies. So we decided to be very, very small on mechanization. We don't need more than what we have, and altogether we spend about 50,000 euro for the tractor and the add-ons and all stuff, which is very cheap if you know tractor prices. We are off the grid. We don't really have a choice. There's no grid. It's UN zone. So we solar powered. We made a big mistake. We bought a windmill from China, and it didn't last long. The brake inside didn't work, and we have very strong wind where we are, and it blew up. And so we had to remove it. And now we're relying only on solar panel. And in the future, when we need to extend and we have bigger energy needs, I'm working on a gasification project for the waste of the olives. But I'll come back to that when we talk about the olives. So we made this factory behind. It's an olive mill, and we kept it inside open space. I mean, everything is on wheel. Even the sinks, we have water and electricity everywhere, so we can modify the factory according to what we do in it. If we do syrups or vinegars or olive oil, it's a space which is very, very modular. This is a pellet maker. This is what we use now for the waste of the olives. So after the olives are pressed, the waste is put outside to dry for a year, and once we have the right humidity content, we put it in this machine, and it makes pellets that people use for stoves. In Cyprus, there's very little firewood. It's very, very expensive firewood. So we sell this in DIY shops, and people use that for heating. The main investment was irrigation, of course. We have kilometers and kilometers and kilometers of pipes. And that's the thing I really learned here is irrigation, because it's quite complex. You have to work with flows, friction losses, choosing the right diameters of pipes for the right usage, air valves and stuff like that. This is the first thing you need to learn if you're going to work in dry land and if you have access to irrigation water, is how to fix a good irrigation. And you can save lots of money if you know what you're doing. And we were lucky here on the land. We have an old man retired from the Ministry of Agriculture, who is an irrigation engineer, and he's helping us a lot. And he taught me everything I know about irrigation now. But this is the biggest investment. So as you see now, it doesn't really look permaculture, because it's just the beginning. What we did is first to plant the cash crops, the olives. Those are a year-old Koroneki trees, and we in the process of planting all the rest. So the aromatics in betweens, but in lines, because now we're working with a tractor. It's much easier to work in straight lines when when you have mechanization, for everything, for harvest, for spraying, for even pruning, and for irrigation as well. So we are multiplying the aromatics as we speak, and we're going to plant them in between the olives. Many other things are growing, not many other things, but few things are growing, and here you can see caper bush. And those came, they were not here when we started. And the Sisyphus you see at the back was here, we kept them all. Another one at the back, and I see I've been speaking for 48 minutes, so I'm going to make it fast. So another example of Sisyphus with the wild asparagus growing in, and we probably see some cyst and other plants growing in. We're keeping this because this will host the insects that will help us pest control. This is a pomegranate planted right in the middle of the thyme. Cypriot thyme is one of the best in the world. It's amazing. See, the thyme is quite dry, and this is all thyme bushes and cistus here. And we're planting right in the middle. For fertilization, we adding compost, and we can't make compost for so many trees, so we have composted manure of sheep and goat, and we inoculated with high quality compost that we're making on the farm, and we're mixing that 1 to 10, and that's what we use for fertilization. But we're planning to move away from fertilization in about 10 years. I will come back to that in a minute. This is a caper bush. Caper bush, it's a year old. It came on its own. Amazing. So you will see a few like this. We're leaving all these things. We're not touching them. This is wild asparagus going behind. Another tree, 1 year old. You see that they grow sideways because we have a lot of wind. Another one. And this is what we're trying to create. That's a creek, if you want, a little valley. And we're putting stones also in it, check dams to slow it down. And we want to create this, cross the land in half, pretty much. And we want to keep this very wild and to slow down the water in these places. Since we have the dam, we don't have so much water coming down here, but the overflow of the dam is coming in here for the moment. We're planning a second dam for a few years, but that's what we're trying to create. It's that little greenery here. That's just after one rain where everything else is dry for the wildlife. And this is what happened behind the stone wall, a check dam. Sediment bringing in, organic matter coming in, birds, animal, and then you have soil creation. We're also part of a program for reintroduction of, not reintroduction, but to create habitats for the barn owl, which is a big owl. So of course, we don't use any poison for rat control and things like that. We use snakes, owls, foxes, and falcons. So that was in the soil you see before. So now we have soil creation, where everywhere else we have about 1 centimeter of topsoil. Here we have about 5-6 centimeters of topsoil. We also provide water all around the place for birds in the summer. But mainly for rats not to eat our pipes. But just by adding just a little bit of water, little balls of water in different places, the population of bird in our area quintupled. It's everywhere. So ground cover, whatever you can have is good. This, I'm sure Neil sees it in Saudi. It's not edible, it's actually poisonous. We are working now on different other ground cover with the Agriculture Research Institute of Cyprus. I'll come back to that in a minute. Here they are. Those are seeds coming from the gene bank of Cyprus. Medicago, it's the family of the alfalfa, which is nitrogen fixing plants. That means it fixes nitrogen from the air into its root system. Different varieties, we're going to try them out. This one here, the Littoralis, was harvested in the salt lake in Larnaca, Cyprus. So pretty salt tolerant and very drought tolerant. So we want to plant them as a ground cover and eventually bring animal into our system with poultry, and we want to graze poultry into the olives. We're gonna wait a few years for that, for the trees to be big enough to stand that. And so the poultry will be able to feed on the ground cover, scratch, remove any pup of the olive fly that can be in the floor. So we're thinking that in about year 10, we'll be able to have no fertilization and no spray whatsoever. So for an olive grove, that's a really big deal, because those are your two biggest, expenses. But I'm pretty confident that we're gonna get there. For the grazing, we want other people to get involved. I have no interest in starting poultry farming, so we'll try to find a local which is interested to do this, and we'll provide the land for it to be grazed. So to come to the olives, those are the Calamon. This is actually the day we harvested them. Those are the olives that break the world record. We harvest by eye dawn, everything by hand. We keep them shallow in the basket so not to bruise them. And we bring them to the mill in about half an hour, which is very fast. This is our mill. It's quite small. It takes about 200 kilos an hour, which is good for us because we harvest and we mill in the same time, basically. I stay at the mill. I have a guy with the pickup truck moving around, bringing me olives, bringing boxes for the people that are collecting, and I have usually about 8 people to collect, and that brings me exactly 100 kilos every half an hour, pretty much. And from there we mill them, and we have lots of setting on this machine. It's a fantastic machine. We modified it as well to make the best olive oil possible. So it's the 3rd year we're making our olive oil. We're still in small quantities. This year we're gonna have about 3,000 bottles. But in 10 years we're gonna be around 50,000 bottles. Our goal from the beginning was to make the best oil possible, so we did lots of research and lots of analysis, and we spent lots of money in analysis with the University of Athens. So the olives are put here, and they go down here. Here there's a blower that blows the remaining leaves into that bag. Here there's water, they get washed, then they go up here, they get crushed here, and then there's malaxation time. Tank here, another one here, and this is a centrifugal system, and then the waste goes outside. So this is the olives that make the best olive oil. So we do an early harvest, but not that early. It's not completely green. This is the mill again. So you can see the color is not a very good picture. So yeah, this is the maturity what we harvest at. So it gives an oil which is quite peppery, a little bit bitter, an amazing organoleptic profile, very deep, very strong body and bouquet, and a very long finish. I mean, this oil stays a very long time with you. It comes here. So this has the highest polyphenol content in the world, and when it comes to the oleocanthal, Cantal, which is the most known polyphenol, we multiply the previous world record by 2.6. So it was a revolution when it comes to phenol in olive oil. The oleocanthal is an anti-inflammatory, works the same way than ibuprofen. So for any inflammatory disease, it's very efficient because it has no side effect. You know, you can't take a box of ibuprofen, but if you take a spoon of this oil, it's like taking a box of ibuprofen, basically. So yeah, it's a medication. It's beautiful oil, but first of all, a meditation. We do everything on spot. We bottle, we cap, we label ourselves. This is the calaman oil. You can see the color. I'm waiting for the result for the new Koroneki, the other species we have, the other you have. And this is our bottles. We're changing this because we want to make them a little bit more fancy, and we got FDA approval. So for the first time this year, we'll sell them to the US. That's another project I'm working on. This is 40,000 carrot trees that we are planting with the University of Cyprus. We're designing 250 hectares for those. This is a training center. This is the ATSAS training center, which was based as a non-profit financed by a foundation. And we decided to run courses related to sustainable living. So it's registered by the government. He has a director, François Giluca. Prior to opening it, she went to every single village to meet the communities there and ask their needs. And we are designing the courses around that. We go from the production, which is my part, you know, permaculture, natural farming, etc., to the transformation, the labeling, food processing, health and safety, all the way to ISO. We have beekeeping courses from beginner all the way to cream breeding and, you know, oil jelly and all that stuff. We're going to work on natural building. This is actual natural building. This is a mud brick, which is a traditional building material in Cyprus. We did the restoration. It was it's actually a historical monument. It used to be a school for the workers of the mine. And so that's our way to give back to the community through providing efficient training. And because it's registered with the government, it's very, very cheap. And that's me, just 1 hour. Okay, is everyone still here?
Yeah, man, that was inspiring.
Many other.
Oh man, yeah, I bet you keep going for forever and ever. That so many questions. Good stuff. So yeah, everybody looks like bravo from Gabriel, outstanding presentation from Nick, super presentation from Mary. Good stuff. So yeah, we're gonna open it up to the Q&A now. So if any of you guys asked any questions earlier, feel free to ask again. Yeah, a lot of people are saying, man, great presentation from Fernando, excellent from Athen. Good stuff, man. I learned a lot.
I wanna use my prerogative as the webinar host and ask my own questions first, if that's all right. Nick, you talked about how you sprayed twice last year on your initial 2-hectare spot. Just for comparison's sake, how much does a typical olive farmer spray in a given year?
From May all the way to November, they will spray every 20 days.
So you're looking at about 10 to 12 different spray sessions.
That will cost you, if you're organics, about 700 euros per hectare.
Okay.
Every time.
All right. And you're down to no spray on your 4 hectares that you've replanted.
Yeah. I was saying with the calaman, we have a very early harvest as well. We harvested them in September, so the temperature were above 35 degrees, and above 35 degrees, you don't have any olive fly. So it's also, the type of olives you have. Early variety are much easy.
Mm-hmm. All right. You said that seed spray improves your product. Can you talk about that a little more?
Well, it changes the organoleptic profile. It's changing the flavors in the oil. And any olive oil that you can try that is growing by the sea is much different. it brings some roundness, if you want, to the oil. I think it has to do with the struggle. I'm not sure about the mechanism. I'm not sure we know about the mechanisms, but the struggle bring very specific flavors.
Cool. You talked about additional products that are coming, some that are coming in naturally, like the wild asparagus, which is really cool, by the way.
Yeah.
And then you've done, you know, your cactus plants and your pomegranates. Have you got plans to integrate honeybees eventually?
Yeah, we have some hives. And we have we work with a guy who happens to be French as well in Cyprus. He's been here for 40 years and he's a top expert in bees. He invented a new treatment for varroa, which is, you know, the main problem for bees, etc., etc. And now we're actually working on the system to predict earthquake with beehives. We're installing electronics into a beehive because from his own experience, every time an earthquake happens, he's seen it in his bees, changing in the vibration of the hive. So we're trying to measure that, and we're working on this now. So we do work with beehives. Once we have the aromatics in, we'll definitely put some hives, because now in Cyprus, this year there was no honey. You know, for example, our friend who's a professional beekeeper, you know, he had almost no harvest whatsoever. So people feed their hive with sugar, and you know, it's not what we want to do. So we're gonna wait a little bit more to have more plants, and then we'll bring more hives.
The reason I ask is because here in Saudi Arabia, the honey that comes off of Ziziphus species is the highest value honey in local and on global markets. And we're working particularly with Ziziphus and Ziziphus spina Christi. You've got Ziziphus lotus over there. But the honey off of these Ziziphus is really, really valuable. In local markets, it sells for as much as $150 per kilo.
Yeah, I have some here actually from Yemen.
There you go. So that
Amazing.
was a thought for me. Happy to see it growing where you are too.
Yeah.
That's it for questions from me. I'm really excited that people can buy your oil in the States. I was going to ask you, how can we buy your oil?
Okay. Basically, we were selling in Cyprus, right? And we are committed to some shops here in Cyprus. But in Cyprus, I cannot sell it the price I wanted, because everyone has olives in Cyprus. You know, everyone has a grandmother or an uncle, and they have an olive oil, and they are used to an olive oil which is quite different from what we do here. They harvest much later. You know, it's a much darker oil, but that's their oil. You know, it's the emotional, you know, attachment. Right? So, I wanted to export, but we committed to sell. So I have only 1,000 bottles for the export. So I have FDA approval, and I'm looking for someone who's willing to take them. I don't know. I have to work on this. We're gonna be bottling in January. I have to work on this.
You mean you need an importer? Is that what you mean? Like someone to handle distribution?
Yeah, I don't want to sell them one by one. I have already some contacts. I want someone who's, you know, willing to buy 1,000 bottles and, you know, sell them or whatever.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that's all from me in terms of questions. I love what you're doing, by the way. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. I love what you're doing too.
Very similar to what I'm seeing where I am in terms of results in the soil, results from, you know, little stoneworks that make a big difference. I love to see it. Thank you so much. And we're going to go to everyone else's questions now.
Okay. Thank you, Neil.
Awesome. So yeah, if Nicholas, if you want to read them yourself, you can pop open that question box. Otherwise, we can read them out to you. Whatever works.
Where is it?
Um, if you go to the right hand part of the control panel, it shares sharing dashboard audio webcam questions. But the first one we have is from Jack. Jack's asking, do you utilize the leaf as well? He says he hears olive leaf extract is great.
Yeah, well, it's not the same thing at all. We are not doing olive oil extract because it's a completely different process. We are chipping the branches, and now we're putting them with the olive waste to create pellets for firewood. But the idea is to mix this and to do a gasification project, but we want to do a community-based one. There's another 2 mills in villages around us, and we want to gather all the waste, what I want to do, and create a big gasification plant where we burn this biomass in a low oxygen environment to create gas, where you can run a big generator to create electricity. Electricity in Cyprus is the most expensive in Europe, so there's a big need for that. And the byproduct of this is basically biochar that you can add in the soil and will act as a sponge for water and habitat for microorganisms, and also some oil that we can run tractors on and stuff like that. So now I'm working on this. The olive extract from the leaves is good, but it's completely different than what you find in the olive oil. It's not as good as polyphenols that are alive. So no, we don't work with the leaves for extracts.
Okay, next question is from Athen. Here we go. Science question. How is the organoleptic profile affected by aromatic plants?
By what? By aromatic plants?
Yeah.
Well, it's something we I don't know how, but it's something that works because oil was made before we arrived and put aromatic plants, and we had a very specific organoleptic profile. Then we planted the aromatics, then we analyze it again, and we have a different organoleptic profile, basically the flavor of the oil. It's experts that are doing those profiles, people that are olive oil tester, and then they write down the impression and stuff like that. And what was brought, it's a little bit more fruity and some flavors of chamomile, tomatoes, and things like this. And this we noticed because we have the before and after. The process, I don't know, but all these aromatics, they're full of oils, and these oils are in the plants, in the seeds, and in the roots. So I won't be surprised if it has an interaction with the roots and stuff. But I don't know the process exactly.
Cool, fair enough. All right, next question from Mary. Are the olives you're pressing just from 1-year-olds, or is that the trees you're expanding with?
Well, we have about 700 trees that are 7 years old, and another 700 that are 2 years old, and another 2,000 that are a year old, and I'm planting another 1,500 this winter. But we also work from this year with trees that are about 500 years old, very, very old trees that belong to the local bishop, to the church basically, and they were not looked after. So we decided to make a deal with him and say, okay, we look after it, we do everything, and we share 50% of the profit. And that was a way for us to increase our production quickly, with these big trees. These are from the local variety, the Cypriot variety. It's a real pleasure to work with old trees. But when we plant the olive tree, that's what we look at. We try to picture it in 500 years.
Did they live 500 years, olive trees?
Way more than that. I think Crete has one that's 2,000 years old. Yeah.
Ooh, that's incredible. All right, David asks, can you rank the treatment in order of effectiveness?
Say again?
Yeah, I'm trying to get more clarity. I assume he's meaning when you compared which ones, like what you combine with the olive oils to get the most effective growth.
For the olives?
Yeah.
Well, basically, mycorrhizal fungi made a big difference. Big difference. It's quite impressive. And I think, because now all our trees are inoculated, I think this is what also boosted our polyphenol count. But this I can't really demonstrate it. But that's what I think. The interplantation with nitrogen-fixing acacias are not something I will redo for sure, because it's not so good for a tree, and then it's just using way too much water. It's water we don't have for the plants, and the organic matter and the nitrogen that's providing, I can get it other ways with no water, no having medicago, this kind of types. So planting other trees in between doesn't work. Then there's different composts, but with olives it's very specific, because if you're too good with your olive tree, if you're too nice and you give him too much good compost, then it will grow and produce no olives. So you have to find the right balance of compost and composting manure. There's not a single recipe. We did some compost for salt remediation at the beginning, but it really is. It depends on what on the situation, on the thing. So the best way is just try out. But the mycorrhizal fungi, go for it for sure. It will work everywhere.
All right, cool. Luke asks, he said, there was a bush that was mentioned earlier that's a habitat for parasitic wasps. He wants you to repeat the name of it.
Okay. It's called the Ditrichia viscosa. Linula viscosa was the old name. That's how I knew it before. Now it's called the Ditrichia, Ditrichia viscosa. For the Greeks out there, it's called the Konisos. You can do aromatic oil as well from it, essential oil. It's amazing for tick removal for dogs and pets and stuff like that. But it's the host of the Eupelmus, which is a fly. It's not really a wasp, which is a parasite of the olive fly. The Eupelmus is the biggest biological control of the olive fly. So you really want to have this guy in your place, and the best way to have it is to have this friend viscosa. And it grows with no water whatsoever. We don't irrigate. And it gives flowers now when we have nothing else. The bees love it.
Nice. So Leslie asked, do you have any problem with black powder, or it's black powder or black powder fungi on olives in Cyprus? And if you do, how do you treat it?
Yeah. All the olive groves that are not pruned properly and that are watered with sprayers. And it's the case in the first 2 hectares, they water with sprayers. So every time you create humidity, straight away you have this fungus on the bark. The best way to treat it is to prune the tree well. Make sure everything breathes around it, and that's another argument against the interplantation with nitrogen fixing trees. Is that the olive tree likes to have space. Now, most of the new olive groves that are planted in the world, especially in California now, they are planting it in high density. So it's basically rows and rows of olives, like just it looks like grapes almost. But if you do that means you have to spray all the time. The spray for fungus is copper, copper and sulfur. You can add copper with a little bit of oil. paraffinic oil or any type of vegetable oil you have, and that should get rid of the fungus. But the main thing is to really prune it and make sure it breathes. And if you water it with sprayers, stop. Change it and water with drippers. Find another way, but don't spray water around the tree. It's definitely cool.
Good stuff. All right, Lena asked. She had a bunch of questions about goats. Like she had a kind of a multi-part question about how you're grazing. So she says, why not use goats to cut the grass instead of the tractor, since the neighbor has goats?
Because in about 30 seconds they will eat the tree. We're talking about the leaves. When we prune next to the land of the 2 hectares, we have the goats next door from our neighbor. We bring the branches there, the goats eat the leaves, and then we shred the thing just to help him out and keep the goats happy. If you bring goats next to an olive tree and if nothing else to eat, which is the case here, they're gonna eat the olive tree.
Okay, cool. And what about sheep? She asks, why not graze sheep if they're around?
Yeah, well, in the old trees, the 500 years old, we have cows, donkeys, and sheep there. The trees have to be able to handle it. With young trees, not possible. The only inconvenience as well is that with sheep and donkeys, the trees are gonna be pruned quite high. They're gonna start eating the lower branches, and because we do hand harvest, we like to have the branches going all the way down almost. But the goats and the donkey and the cows were here before we arrived, so we decided to accept that and take it, as an advantage for us. Because it's kind of a crash grazing the system is doing, the guy, so it's actually pretty good for us. The only thing is the irrigation. Now we have to go the pipe through the trees. But yeah, goat, sheep, cows. But poultry is a good one because it goes go and scratch and remove all the part of the cocoon of the olive fly from the ground. And fertilize as well.
That's good stuff. So TJ says he can't wait to implement olives into his dry lands in Arizona. He said he just messaged you about your products and he'll be in touch. Awesome. Gabriel asked, did you get the same quality olive oil from the first site as you do from the second site? Or do you combine the harvest when you bottle them?
Well, we have different varieties of olives. So on the first site we have Koroneiki olives, which are small olives, classic olive from Greece, Crete, and in these areas. The calamon is separated. The best olive oil we made was from the calamon. It was a total of polyphenol way above 3,000 milligrams per liter, which is incredible. If you have more than 250 milligrams, you can have health claim under EU regulation. An average extra virgin olive oil have 70 milligrams with 3,700. So we exploded. That was with the calamon. With the Koroneiki this year, I'm waiting for the result, but they're gonna be quite close. Maybe not as good, but quite close. Even the worst oil we made, which is the one from the bishop, we have 2,600 milligrams of polyphenol, and this is mainly due because instead of having half an hour, 40 minutes, we have to mill them in 1 hour because it's further away, and also the harvest was more difficult. It took a bit more time and stuff like that. But what we noticed and what we proved, because everyone think that, well, it's commonly thought that you need old trees to make good quality oil. It's not true. We have the best quality oil out of our 2 years old trees. And I think there's a big way of improvement as well for us. We are designing a custom mill, completely under nitrogen, etc., etc. We can go further.
Nice. So Jay Bird asks, Are you concerned about the risk of putting soil on top of your liner due to micro punctures or leakage?
Yeah, we have a very, very good liner, really thick one. We went for good quality. Underneath, we have good geotextile and stuff like that. When you put soil, you have to be careful, not to have big stones. The soil, it's okay. It's the rubbing of, sharp stone or something like this. It can be rubbed, but no, we have no problem so far. The fish are multiplying like crazy. Crazy.
Oh, here we go. Here's a good question from Fernando. He's asking you, do you work at all, do you use holistic management at all when you plan your farm? When did it come into your business practice, and what has it done to your decision process if you implement it?
Well, from the beginning, that was the deal. When we arrived here, there was no holistic practice or nothing like that. It was organic, but it was just basically replacing chemicals by authorized organic chemicals. That was just the deal. And then when I met the owner, I started talking. We had some wine, and I started talking about permaculture, agroecology, holistic. All this approach has to see a farm as one organism, and he clicked and he understood it straight away. And it was in our brief that every new plantation, a year after that, when we got hired full time to do this, it was in the brief to do it that way. So the only limitation really was the budget. But then we were limited only by our imagination. The owner was fully supportive in the process.
Yes. Yeah, holistic management. Oof, that's so important. Gabriel asked something she wanted to check about the weather. So you had mentioned that you're used to 300 to 350 millimeters per year, but you only got 3 millimeters last year. Was that correct?
Yeah. In one rain.
In one rain. That's crazy.
We basically had, we had 3 millimeters in October 2015, and another less than 3 millimeters, actually 2 millimeters, at the end of October now 2016. So we had 12 months, almost 13 months, with nothing. But that's not a common thing, that's not the norm. The norm is to have a fairly wet winter. It started raining in October, November, all the way to March, light rain and stuff like that. But what we're seeing now, it's moving into a rain pattern that you find in the desert, probably what you see, Neil, in your place. That means, big rain event, lots of water in a short period of time. That's what we see. And that's how we design the dam, basically. It's all drain and stuff like that around those rain patterns. And when we had that rain, it's a shame the video doesn't work, but when we had that rain, we just finished the lake. And the lake is 17,000 cubic meter, 66 by 33 by 9, and we filled half of it. Not quite half of it. Let's say 1/3 of it with the rain.
Yeah, that's very similar to what we see here. Is we got 3 millimeters in January of this year and haven't seen anything since. Although we may have a little bit this week, but that is pretty normal for where we are. We went 37 months straight with no precipitation.
Yeah.
Between January 2011 and January 2014. So yeah, it sounds very similar.
Well, if this happens in Cyprus, 37 months is going to be a big catastrophe.
Absolutely.
The dam now empty. All the dams that are providing irrigation and drinking water and everything around Cyprus. It's basically the mountains that are giving water to everyone else. They're empty now. Waiting for rain maybe next Wednesday, but if it doesn't happen, it's the new moon now, then it's going to be seriously problematic. I mean, collapse in agriculture, etc., etc. We're talking serious problem. That's going to happen. I mean, Cypriots are not quite ready for that yet. There's a huge waste of water. I believe there's enough water for everyone here if it was used properly. We're quite lucky with our mountains, but since the beginning we knew this. You know, this is in our mind, and we're designing everything around that. You know, those 2-3 years with no rain.
2-3 years
Okay.
without water. Sorry, I got lost in questions.
Next question. I'll take it, Raleigh.
Yeah, go for
This
it.
is from Uta. She told me how to say her name. She said, Nick, you mentioned compost turning. What is the source of your compost feedstock?
The compost is basically, last year we didn't do compost because we had no growth. We're collecting wild plants. Whatever grows around it is quite a big diversity. Most of them are dynamic accumulators and stuff like that. In manure, we have some chickens here on the farm. We have next door sheep and goats. We have rabbit manure as well, and cow as well, donkey. We have 2 horses as well, so we're mixing all those manures together. The more types of manure, the best. And the same, the source of carbon is mainly straw that we get from a neighbor farmer as well. And the greens is whatever we can find.
Yeah. Yeah, we also have years where we haven't made any because we couldn't get green material.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Next question is from BB. How do you plant the Sisyphus trees? Are you planting from seed or cuttings? Are you getting jujube fruits each year, or is that dependent on rainfall?
Well, we don't plant them. They plant themselves. All those wild things, they plant themselves. Create a little bit of habitat for the birds and they come. I never tried to plant it. I'm pretty sure you have to scarify the seed somehow. I'm also pretty sure the cuttings will be not too difficult. It's pretty hardy plant. The fruit of the Sisyphus we have is quite small. We didn't really look into transforming it. No, ours is much smaller. Sisyphus largest is it's like a little pea. It's good food for the birds and the rabbits, and for me it's fine like this so far. Maybe in the future we'll plant different types of Sisyphus, work around that and stuff. But we're very busy. We still haven't finished planting. We have a lot of other things to do. So the little sophistication we'll do in a year or two when we have more time.
Cool. Next question from Ravi. Carob has separate male and female plants which are difficult to distinguish. How are you dealing with this issue?
Well, we don't deal. We do what we have to do, which is basically planting a male every 5 to 7 female. They're not that difficult to distinguish when you have the eye for it. What we do is we plant them from seeds, and then about 6 months, a year, depends on the growth, we graft them, and then we know exactly the tree we took the graft from, so we know which one will be male and female. The 40,000 you've seen, we're gonna graft them this spring, and we're gonna plant them next winter. It's a big thing, Carol. The price per ton almost doubled in the last 2 years. There's a huge demand for it. In about 20 years, cacao is going to be very expensive. It's a good substitute. But the main use is the seeds. They use in the food industry for thickener. It's used in many different applications. There's a big future in cacao. We use it in the farm here. We make a syrup with it, from pomelo, which is traditional Cypriot thing, and out of this syrup, we're turning into balsamic vinegar. We're going to be ready to commercialize this because we're still in experimentation, but now we have a product this year. Probably from next year, we're going to commercialize all our line of vinegars.
Carob vinegars. All right. Nando says, Nicholas, your system is very young now. You said you are preparing it to run with very little rain. How are you designing it for 50 plus years?
Well, first we decided to have a very low, very extensive system. That means the spacing between the trees, it's quite wide. It's 6 meters, where most of the plantation now are either super intensive, every 50 centimeters, or high intensive, or even in the extensive system, we keep the maximum 5 meters. We allow the space for the tree to grow and not to be replaced, because most of olive groves, they replace the trees because after a few years they're not as productive. They need pruning, they need more work, etc., etc. So after 50 years, usually they remove the trees, and those trees you find them in pots in nurseries, and they sell them like this for gardens and stuff. What we decided is basically have this, low intensity. What's going to happen when our trees are 50, 100 years old? Of course, things will have changed. We know that. We're going to change the environment just because we're going to bring shade, first of all. So the aromatics, we know we're going to grow them for 10 years. And then after 10 years, we probably won't have a good production in aromatic, and probably even stop collecting it. But by then, we have a much bigger production in olives, and animal production in between with the grazing and things like that. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, that's good. Designing for time it's a nebulous concept as it is. Roberto asks, where can we buy the best olive oil in Cyprus? Which supermarket, and will it have a new label? I assume he's talking about your olive oil. If you were buying local in Cyprus, where would we get it?
Alpha Mega, Metro, organic shops, Cantina, these places.
All right. Ravi asks, he says, alfalfa is very water thirsty. Is Medicago drought tolerant?
It depends which one, and that's what we're going to try. We're doing a field test, waiting for the rain to plant it. So we have the 6 different varieties, and we're going to try. And of course, no irrigation. They will have to survive with the rain in the winter, and then we see what's happening. It's a good forage. It's not as good as alfalfa, but if you can have forage with no irrigation here in Cyprus, or in dry areas, it's quite amazing.
About your prickly pear cactus, what products are you planning from that plant?
From the seeds, we want to make oil. It's an amazing oil. It's not to eat. It's used as cosmetics. From the leaves, we want to dry them and turn it into powder, which is basically pure fiber. And from the pulp, we're still working on it. We're working around the modification of a traditional product, which is called the tsutsukko. It's hard to explain if you don't know what tsutsukko is. But it's basically, imagine like an energy bar, if you like. Some kind of.
All right. A lot of people asked about your mycorrhizal inoculation. Where did you get your mycorrhizae? What kind did you use?
I bought first a box that has 3 different mycorrhizal fungus in it, and also some nitrogen-fixing bacteria as well. We bought it here in Cyprus. There's a guy who imports it, and then from this one we multiplied it. you know, with nitrogen fixing trees, with an allium together, just to make sure we have the, you know, different types of root systems and different types of interaction with the microorganism. And then we multiply it like this. After a year, we brought it to the lab to see if it was working. It was working fine. So from that, we inoculated all our trees. You can buy for quite cheap a little piece of it and then multiply it. If you just Google, you know, mycorrhizal fungi multiplication, you'll find there's tons of it.
So it was a pretty standard mycorrhizal package.
Yeah.
Yeah. Question from Kate. Does your solar power cover all your harvest equipment, or do you use a backup generator?
We use a backup generator sometimes with the olive mill. The olive mill is too powerful. We produce 6 kV with the solar panel, but eventually we'd like to get rid of the generator altogether, either through the gasification or adding more solar panel. The windmill was a catastrophe. We bought cheap on Alibaba, Chinese made, big mistake. It costed quite a lot of money to fix it. But if we had this windmill working, we should be just enough with the olive mill. But, you know, in the future we're going to need a bigger olive mill, so bigger electricity needs and stuff like that. But this is only for 2 months of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Is your favorite olive tree the Calamon? What's your favorite variety?
If you talk about aesthetics, I like the Cypriot tree. It has the perfect proportions, size of olive, size of leaves. If you talk about oil, personally, I like the Koroneki. It's a little bit more complex. It's a little bit more interesting. The Calamon is quite fantastic, but not as complex, not as sophisticated than the Koroneki. Otherwise, you know, it has many Manzanino, Manaki, and stuff like that. But with the 3 we work with, my favorite will be the Koroneki. And it looks more like a wild tree, is more resistant, you know, more dry tolerant. The Koroneki will be the most tolerant, really, the easiest.
Okay, that was Chris's question. Ben asks, you mentioned biochar / agrichar. How do you apply or use it on your olives?
I don't use it because I don't have any. I mention it because we were talking about gasification, turning the waste of the olives and the waste, you know, from the cuttings into electricity through burning them in a low oxygen environment. And the byproduct of this is the biochar, basically. And this, it doesn't have any nutritional value, if you like. The only thing it brings, it's structure to the soil, capacity of holding water, and habitat for microorganisms. It speeds up the process a little bit. It's not that amazing, you know. Lots of people are saying, you know, biochar will change the world and stuff like that. It never works like this, but if you have biochar, yeah, use it. It's an amazing sponge for water. And, you know, it's a source of carbon you're storing into your soil, so you're fighting climate change. You know, that's all we're doing here. You know, we're sinking carbon. You know, you do biochar, but just by planting trees, you know, no tilling, increasing organic matter content into your soil, etc., etc. You know, insurance companies should pay us for the work we're doing. We're actively fighting climate change.
Good.
Luke
Luke asks, how is the mycorrhizal fungi introduced?
If you buy the powder, you have many different types. Some you can mix it with the water of the irrigation, some goes in the thing. In my case, is because it was multiplied in soil, it was basically 1 handful of the soil which was inoculated, We sacrificed lots of acacias along the process, just around the root system of the tree. So you dig a little bit. Our trees were young, root system is just there, and then just go around the root system. And then it works. We did analysis. It works. It's connected. The root system and the fungi work together. The main difference I've seen is on the water. We can actually decrease the water on the trees that are inoculated.
All right. Tom G says, I didn't quite get how your irrigation tubes don't clog. What's the reason that your irrigation system doesn't clog?
I was speaking about the drippers, self-regulated drippers. It's just mechanic. It's just the way they are made. Just Google it, self-regulated drippers, and here they call it macaroni because inside it looks like a little macaroni. And they can block eventually if you have really big sediment, but they don't block like any other drippers. All those drippers you can find that you twist, all this is crap. You never know exactly how much water you have, etc. The self-regulated ones, I don't know about the US where you can find all this. But if you look, they usually sells in rolls, and you have a dripper every 70 centimeter or every meter or whatever, and we cut those and use it like this. Those are made in Israel. All the rest of the irrigation is made in Cyprus. Those drippers are made in Israel.
All right. Jose says, hi, I'm here from the driest area in Mallorca. I'm using Leucaena leucocephala and Albizia julibrescens because of the clay content of my project. I see that you are over volcanic rock, which is kind of fast-growing. And what kind of fast-growing NF trees have you tried, and which nitrogen-fixing shrubs? And did they die in the 3 millimeter year drought?
Yeah, if you don't irrigate any of those, they'll die, even the leukemia. What species we tried mainly failed. Most of the species we found them in Cyprus from seeds. We started them with no irrigation. All the pieces we have with no irrigation, everything died. That's why we moved away a little bit from this. We still have the leukemia, which basically is the most dry resistant, but we didn't have good access to good seeds. We tried some mimosa, some Australian one, because there's lots here in Cyprus, in bushes, all the mimosa family. It didn't really do anything for us, to be honest. If you compare the work and the water use, was not really worth it. I'm really thinking about ground cover and working on Indicago when it comes to nitrogen fixing. And because I'm working with olives, if I was working with something else, maybe a bit more sacrificial trees in the between, maybe working, but around the olive, not so much.
Just to piggyback on you, where we are.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be speaking over you. Where we are, there is some supposition that the Ziziphus or some species of Ziziphus are nitrogen fixing. I've read a couple of studies where they found nodes in Ziziphus roots that were host to nitrogen fixing bacteria. And where I am, our mesquite does not need any irrigation, and it is also a nitrogen fixer. Those are the only two that I know of that might fix. The mesquite is known to fix nitrogen, the Ziziphus might, but they're the only things where I am that don't need irrigation.
Yeah, the mesquite, if I had some seed, I'd definitely try. The Sisyphus, you have to, you have to love him. You're falling in love with the Sisyphus. There's a little one just by the factory, started growing this spring, and I was seeing it growing, and I said, okay, I'm gonna grow it as a tree. I'm gonna prune it. Just, you know, it was on my way every day, and no one was watering that guy. And now, and I've been pruning it, you know, a lot. Now it's taller than me as a single trunk. You know, I'm gonna try to make it as a parasol, just because it's next to the factory. It grew, you know, 1.80 m from spring to now with no water. You know, it's, I mean, fucking hell. This is what you want. And if you have clay soil and stuff like that, the root system will just go through it, you know, no problem.
Follow-up question on that from Luke. He says, do you think anything can be done to prevent desertification in Cyprus? Could rainfall be increased somehow?
Well, I'll plant some trees and hope for the best. Increasing rainfall, you know, except planting trees, I don't see what else you can do. You know, they're saying there's a big, you know, there's a big movement in conspiracy theory around the world. You know, people are angry and stuff like that. In Cyprus, is the, you know, the spraying. They say that the British are spraying because we have lots of army bases here. It's a big strategic importance here in Cyprus, and we have 13% of the territory, which is still British territory. And it's bases, and it's from here that lots of, you know, flights are going to Syria. This is from here that we are listening to Syria, Israel, and all that area, you know. And they're saying that they are spraying to move the rain so they have a better, you know, fly windows and radar so on. But I think the only way is just to really plant trees. You know, it's you can work on you know, very small rain cycles, you know, with dams and things like that. You can increase humidity in an area. You can change the microclimate in an area. But if we're talking global scale, we have to start deforesting and start planting.
Rachel Jesse asks, how can an interested bulk export buyer get information about your oil and contact you?
Well, just give me an email. Send me an email. Or you can contact us on Facebook at SAS Organic Products. And then I can explain the oil, I can send you the analysis, etc.
Yeah, I just put Nicholas's email in the chat box for anyone that wants it or wants to get his olive oil in bulk, set up that deal. So send him an email.
Just compost there.
Nick, you mentioned in 10 years you will back off irrigation. How will you know when it is a good time so that your products and tree health are not negatively affected?
Well, when it comes to the production of olives per tree, the tree has to be happy all the way to the flowering. It has to be able to flower properly and stuff like that. But the fact that it's making olives, it has to do with the pruning, the fertilizing. You don't want to give too much, you don't want to give too little, etc., etc. And the water comes down. We will know when we have sufficient organic matter into our soil. When we created a living sponge with our soil, we will know that our trees will, just by looking at them, an olive tree speaks very freely. You know, as soon as it's not happy, the leaves turns. You can detect all the stages with the olive trees. And once we have this living sponge and that the trees are big enough, a big root system, you know, well established, then we'll see. I think it's 10 years. We'll see. It's just a way. But in 10 years, definitely we'll have the animals in there. We'll also increase organic matter, you know, through the grazing of the medical nitrogen fixing, etc., etc. We'll see. The trees that we are working on, the 500 years old trees, are not irrigated. They have no irrigation. It does decrease the production a little bit in dry years, and sometimes drastically reduce the production. But you know, you don't spend any money on water because water is expensive here.
Absolutely. Gabriel asks, can you take advantage of incoming winds or fogs off of the sea for humidity collection if rains continue to fail?
Yeah, you can do dew harvesting, and there's very good examples in Morocco and things like that. The thing is, you won't be able to do it all year long. You have to do, you have to have dew, so you have to have difference in temperatures, etc., etc., the right humidity and things like that. But it's possible, yeah. Will it be enough to cover the irrigation needs of Cyprus? I don't think so. But it can help a lot, yes.
All right. TJ says, I found Ditrichia viscosa on Wikipedia, but I cannot find a way to get seeds. Please advise.
Go in the wild and look for them. Where are you based? In the US?
TJ does not say.
Okay. Well, if in the US, I will.
He also asked, how much was our Oilomio equipment? How much did that cost you?
The whole system with the tanks, with the nitrogen, because when the oil comes out, it's pumped directly with nitrogen, so there's no contact with oxygen, blah blah. The whole system was about 30,000 euros, which is quite cheap.
Good. All right, here's a cool one. In the non-militarized zone between North Korea and South Korea, there's amazing biodiversity, plant and animals that survived between the borders.
Yeah.
Would this be true of the demilitarized zone between the two sides in Cyprus? And do you notice effects from greater diversity nearby?
Yes. Many studies have been done about it. You can Google it. It's very interesting. He actually saved some species. The wild goat of Cyprus was saved from extinction because it could hide in the UN zone. There's no hunting there. Before it was protected. Yeah, huge diversity, especially birds, because we're in that migratory routes. And Cyprus has a very bad habit, Cypriot hunters, of trapping songbirds and stuff like that are almost extinct. And in the rest of the island, they trap them everywhere. They put glue on the trees. It's illegal and stuff, but they still do it. And the UN zone, they're here. And no one, because the UN is patrolling, you need a permit to go in. No one is hunting in there. So yes, big difference. No pesticide, it's clean, tons of birds. Yeah, it's an amazing place.
That's pretty neat stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. Folks, we've got 2 minutes left before it's midnight here. We are going to tie things up. Just a couple more questions. We've got one question from David Haight. He says, what are you going to make the artificial islands for your dam out of?
Well, we're working on a project. The outlayer is plastic, unfortunately, big plastic pies where we put plastic bottles. We're stealing them from recycling bins, and that's our flotation system. Then we have a net. Then I'm not 100% sure about the final design yet, but so far it's this with reeds, dry reeds as a floating things, and then another net, and then gravel, and then a bit of soil, and then we tried last year with mint. Works very well. But they will not all be planted. We're working also on habitat for our fish. because we have reproduction on our fish, on the bass, the tilapia, and stuff like that. But because we don't want to feed them at all, they eat each other a lot, especially the babies. So we're gonna do some cages in the water where the small fish can go through the through the net, but not the big fish, etc. So we have lots of different designs with different levels underwater as well for different habitats for breeding for fish, bringing wood stones and stuff like that. So that's why we're supposed to be working this winter once we finish planting the trees. We can once I start, I will put some pictures on Facebook and we're starting.
Well, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
There's someone else speaking.
Oh, that
okay.
was Wayne Dorban's assistant.
Yeah. Here are the last couple questions. What characteristics do you look for in choosing carob varieties?
So again,
what varieties are you working with?
We're working on what works here. There's about 6 different varieties here in Cyprus, plus many that are not identified because the carobs, Cyprus been since antiquity been growing carobs, so people have been bringing them in and out of the island. The main variety we're working is the Tilaria, which creates a really nice big pods. You have also other varieties, but the Tilaria is the convenient one because they have different ways of growing the carobs. And the main pest for carobs is rats. The Tilaria, you can easily grow them as a single trunk and then put a piece of metal around it and sort of those rats.
All right, this is the last one before we're going to wrap it up. Have you considered rock mulching the olives or any other tricks for cooling the soil and decreasing soil water loss? And if so, what are the pros and cons that you looked at for that?
Well, I would like to mulch everything, but I don't have the resources, either money or biological resources to mulch everything. So we're relying on ground cover. I tried rock mulching, not on olives. I tried on the Sisyphus I'm talking about. I tried on the fig tree, and I tried on the carrot tree. To be honest, I didn't see much difference. The thing I didn't like is the big adder that was sleeping in there. Make it a little bit dangerous to work around it. And then I had some bugs, some big, big black one. I don't know what you call them in English. Scarabée. I don't know. That was eating the bark of the tree. So I removed them.
The scarabs.
Yeah. But if it works for you, why not? If you have stones, stones are an amazing resource.
All right. Nick, I just want to read you some of these comments that we got while you were talking, because you can't see these, but Gabriel says, bravo. Nick says, outstanding presentation. Mary said, this is a super presentation. Thank you. Athen said, this was excellent. Marilyn said, this is inspirational. Incredible restoration ag. Congratulations on the work you're doing. Good information. This has been fantastic, to be honest. I really hope that we can help you find a good buyer. And for everybody still out there, this webinar is going to go up for sale once we've edited it a bit. And then every download that we get, Nick gets a share of all of our revenues. And so if you want to support Nick and his work and you can't buy his olive oil, that's a good way to do it. And the more that you folks share this, the more that we can support Nick and other folks who come onto our webinars and show the amazing work that they're doing. But Nick, thank you so much for coming on. We love the work you're doing.
And it's been 6 years we haven't seen each other. Maybe it's time.
Yeah, if I intend to fly up there while I'm on this side of the planet.
Yeah, we're next door.
Yeah.
Anytime, anytime. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. That was fantastic. If for future webinars, if you guys want to sign up and get on our list, we're at sustainabledesignmasterclass.com. Got the window open in the background for any of you guys who want to jump on there and sign up. Next week, we got a really cool guest to follow up on, mycorrhizal fungi. We're going to bring in one of the world's best experts on fungi. So, he wrote a huge, amazing book called Radical Mycology. That's why we have Peter McCoy on next week to talk about improving soil, livelihoods, and health with fungi. So that's going to be excellent if you're a fungi fanatic. If you like Paul Stamets, you're going to really love Peter McCoy.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I guess I'll turn that back over to Neil if you want to take us out.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming to Sustainable Design Masterclass. Thanks for your time. We love getting feedback from you. Love hearing how this stuff helps you guys in your work. So please share liberally, and we'll get you on the next webinar, hopefully.
Oh, one more thing. We forgot to plug Atsas Organics. Let me put his website in the. Nick, we almost forgot to put your website in there.
All right. The website, we haven't updated it in a long time. If you want to contact us, email and Facebook is probably better.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll put.
Organic Farm on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, the page is organic products. Yeah.
Awesome. And I will talk to Nicholas. I'll talk to you all. I might be able to insert your video in the replay, so just send me the link and I'll put it in at the spot you want it, because we'll get some video on the replay.
Nice.
All right. Thanks so much, Nicholas. And thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate taking your time out of your day to join us for this awesome class. And thank you, Neil. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we're going to end the broadcast right now. So we're stopping recording. Boosh.